Hi, Dr. Cora Stack here. Another line of inquiry, I suppose, with regard to trying to figure out how or why Mr Simon Harris decided to block Fine Gael from voting for independence. It wouldn't have anything to do with some of his new party coalition members. It wouldn't have anything to do with that. I mean, that's another line of inquiry. Would there have been any kind of secret deal done there? I'm not saying there is now, and if anyone has any witnesses or evidence, could they come forward and share it in this website? But we can't say anything for definite. Everything is alleged, or it's not even alleged, it's purely a line of inquiry at the moment. So there are a couple of angles here that we kind of haven't really looked at yet, and but of course without concrete information we can't say anything. So nonetheless, whichever way you look at it, it does not reflect well on Mr Harris. But if there were others involved, or putting him under undue influence, it wouldn't really reflect well on them either. But without proper and full information, we cannot say anything. But it seems out of character for Mr Harris, who had a record of supporting independence and people who are independent voices, and I won't say whistleblowers, but people who didn't always agree with the establishment, and before, that this is what he would do. So the question is his personality change, or was he put under undue influence? Now, I have no answer to these questions. These are only all lines of inquiry, and if anybody has any evidence, or if there's any witnesses, or anything at all that might help the inquiry, or the investigation, or the line of thinking as to wondering why did Mr Harris decide to block, decide to get Fine Gael to block independence. So it isn't very characteristic of him in terms of previous posts that he held, but perhaps he's changed personality. That often happens. There's a thing called kind of narcissism, where people kind of go this way, the power goes to them. But I don't know, is this the case? I can't say that this is the case, that Mr Harris has become narcissistic. What happens often is when people get too powerful, they can become dictatorial, and they don't become themselves. They lose their own themselves, or something. But I'm not saying this happened, because I don't know. I'm just looking for answers. I have far more questions than I have answers. But it's certainly, there's not the perception of silencing dissenters, silencing independence from wherever source it came from is very disappointing. But particularly if it came from other sources, that would be even more troublesome or worrying in terms of democracy. And this is why we need to try and maybe broaden the investigation to see, are there any other people that may have had undue influence. It may not be the case at all, but we'd like to rule out all other avenues of investigation, just to be sure that we have our facts, and without the facts we cannot say anything for definite. And I'm someone who always likes to go on the facts. I do not like to make any kind of statement without the facts, and it's very disappointing indeed for all of the independents that Mr Harris would silence dissent in this kind of way, and would obstruct democracy, inverted commas, and would weaken it by doing what he's doing. But if there are other people behind the scenes, manipulating him in some kind of way, that would even be more concerning for the matters being discussed. But that remains an open question.